Now, believe it or not, some people think our daily politics mood box trivialises things, dumbs them down. Well, today we're going to prove it can handle some of the biggest political issues. We're going to ask Labour delegates to choose between socialism and capitalism.
Raise the scarlet standard high, and if it falls, we'll live and die. No cowards win.
Are you a socialist or a capitalist?
Well, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? Why do you think I'm here? I don't expect that to fill up at all.
You expect there will be no balls in the capitalist
there'll
box?
be no balls at all. I shall check it after lunch.
I think I'm going to put it there, in the middle.
You've gone for the third way. That's very sort of 1998-ish of you.
Well, I think you can learn a lot from Blair's legacy.
Are you a socialist or a capitalist?
I'm not getting involved in your ball games today.
Well, to me it's an obvious question, and it should be obvious to all sections of society, really. I don't think anybody benefits under capitalism, and I think the more we can move back towards our socialist route.
Feel there's enough socialism being displayed here at this Labour conference?
Definitely. I think in his speech yesterday, our leader really brought socialism back and showed that Labour's going to be left-wing, we're going to be progressive, and that we're doing what's best for the people.
What are you prepared to give up so that the world becomes more socialist?
Give up? I guess I'd give up my Nike trainers.
Those mad people. How can four people say capitalism?
Do you think they come to the wrong conference?
Yeah, they have. They should be mentioned at the Tory Party conference or at the UKIP conference or something.
It's our type of socialism as opposed to the Americans getting slightly confused between either Nazi socialism or communist socialism.
Are you a capitalist or a socialist? Socialist! What was that?
Socialist!
And a very loud one.
Yes.
So is the energy policy a socialist policy or a capitalist policy?
Pro-business, pro-competition policy, and that's what we need. We can't stick with just 6 companies running everything and
that sounds a bit
not getting
socialist.
fair deals. No, I think it's about making sure that we have proper government regulation for things like this that are important to the public and businesses.
Why is socialism? Why will no one say the word? Look, we're being filmed by some rivals. So what? You've coined a new one.
Yeah, I'm a responsible capitalist.
Oh well, we don't have a responsible capitalist.
Well, you should have replaced the capitalist one with responsible.
Okay.
Then you'll have a higher one.
Is Labour a responsible capitalist kind of party, or?
I think it is. I think that's what Ed was talking about in his speech. I think that's what Ed talked about last year and the year before. And I think it's just basically where the public is all right. Because we're not going to go back to the 70s.
Can you explain to me what socialism, what capitalism is? And I'll quite happily put a ball in the box on where I think we should be.
Well, I wonder, have you hit the nail on the head that we're in a post-ism world?
A post-ism world. So you're asking questions about socialism and capitalism, and yet you're saying to me we're in a post-ism world.
No, I asked if we are in one.
If we're in one.
Because your point is that those labels are inadequate.
My point is that you're asking questions, and I'd like to know what you mean by those phrases.
Ed, do you want to come and do the Daily Politics survey? You grab a ball. We do a survey every day for the Daily Politics.
Oh,
I
I know these surveys.
Well, you know what the question is today?
No, I've no idea.
We've compressed 100 years of history into 2 minutes, and we're asking people to choose socialism or capitalism.
Yep.
Which would you go for?
Socialism, of course. Go on, you vote for me.
I'll vote for you.
Listen, but don't tell anybody that you're voting for me, because people might think the BBC's independence has been compromised. Yeah.
Surely not at a party conference.
Raise the scarlet standard high, no cowards flinch.
How does it feel being one of 6 capitalists in the whole Labour Party conference?
Well, I'm into responsible capitalism, as Ed Miliband was speaking about earlier today, and if you want a dynamic market economy, I'm into that as well. Things can only get better as far as I'm concerned.
Where have I heard that phrase? Where have I heard that phrase before? The Shadow Chancellor's a bit tired because he's just done a little rowing challenge.
And came top of the whole conference, so that's fabulous.
You do slightly look like you need to sit down though.
I know. Here we go.
There we go. A historic moment where a member of the current Shadow Cabinet admits proudly they're a socialist.
The 1945 Labour government, the National Health Service, the greatest achievement of the 20th century, Labour socialist values in action. Of course, proud to say it.
Well, there you go. What history could not settle in 100 years, we've settled in 3 minutes. Socialism has triumphed convincingly over capitalism at the Labour Party conference.
Yes, surprise, surprise. Well, joining us in the studio to discuss this, frankly shocking finding, and also I thought Ed Balls was having far too much fun there with the mood box, are journalists Owen Jones and Dan Hodges. Dan Hodges claims to have put the 5 red balls in the capitalism.
They were all
yours. So there aren't any capitalists at Labour Party Congress.
Saboteur. Just me.
That's what he is. I presume, not wanting to put words into your mouth, you would have put the red ball in the capitalism one.
Well, I mean, I think, having a debate about whether you want socialism or capitalism in Britain in 2013 is a bit like having a debate about whether you want to breathe air or you want to breathe water. I mean, whoever wins the next election, this is going to be we are going to have a capitalist economy. That's whether Ed Miliband or David Cameron wins. The debate for the Labour Party is actually, do they pursue a left-wing political strategy in the run-up to the election, or do they pursue a centrist political strategy in the run-up to the election? Now, actually, if you think about it, New Labour actually introduced what I think most people would say would be some classical left-wing policies, the windfall tax, the minimum wage, signing the social chapter. But because of what Blair was saying, the sort of conversation he was having with the British people and where he was positioning himself on the political spectrum, they weren't seen as being left-wing policies, they were seen as being centrist policies.
Socialism, I presume, for you?
Oh, all the way, of course. And I have to say, I find it very amusing, all the reds under the beds rhetoric we've had lately along the lines of comparing Ed Miliband to, well, everyone from Robert Mugabe to the Bolsheviks because he wants to control energy prices. I mean, the reality is, let's be honest, most people out there, outside of politicos like us sitting in this studio, they don't think in terms of left and right, let alone capitalism or socialism. They think in terms of issues that have to be addressed in a way that's convincing and coherent. Now, ironically, and you might find this amusing, I don't know if you know this, Dan, but the first time Labour officially called itself a democratic socialist party in its constitution wasn't when it was founded, it was 1995 under Tony Blair. It was a revision of Clause 4. Now, I think for Blair it meant motherhood and apple pie and people being nice to each other. For me, democratic socialism is shifting wealth and power in favour of working people. That's those who keep society ticking, the wealth creators of society. It's about extending democracy to every sphere of life, but it's also actually about challenging the form of socialism we currently have, which is socialism for the rich. Banks bailed out by the taxpayer, tax credits subsidising low pay, housing benefit subsidising private landlords instead of actually having democratic socialism.
Whose side are you on then? You're going to be on the side with the Conservatives, the rich and the wealth creators?
All the way down the line.
He's Cameron's favourite columnist, according to the Spectator.
Absolutely, our Prime Minister is very perceptive. No, I mean, the whole point about a centrist political agenda is it does contain significant elements of left-wing thinking, because if you remove the left-wing elements from a centrist political agenda, it's not a centrist political agenda, it's a hard-right political agenda.
Mark Mallet-Brown, where would you have put your red ball?
I think we are at the wrong end of the argument. People want a moderation of energy price increases. It's hitting their budgets. David Cameron tried to do it and flunked it. Miliband's put out a proposal which I suspect will be much modified by the time it happens, but one way or another, politicians are going to be forced to respond to the fact that household energy in cold winters for a lot of Brits is becoming unaffordable. And I think, that's really what this conference was about.
I think that's a really important point, because, I mean, what's interesting about this whole debate about kind of energy companies, if you like, is actually for a lot of the British people, he won't be going far enough. According to the last poll, 69% of Britons actually want energy to be publicly run, to be brought back into public ownership. And
it is going back to the 1970s.
Well, I have to say, these energy companies, or whatever the headline's saying, big energy companies, energy barons holding the country to ransom. We've got this blackmail and bluster because there's an attempt to control energy prices when some people in this country are choosing between heating their homes, feeding their kids, and we have elderly people still freezing to death. I mean, they can...
And the focus group was stratospheric, according to Labour. I mean, Dan Hodges, even Mark Mallet-Brown is saying, this is what people want. You're saying Ed Miliband's terrifying. Why is he terrifying?
Well, he's certainly scaring some members.
He scares you, doesn't he, Dan?
He scares the life out of me. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But why?
Well, it's because it's the broader political context. David Cameron could implement a raft of policies that were advocated by, what was it? It was the Alternative Manifesto, I think it was called, by the sort of hard right of his party. A number of those policies, I don't know what it would be, hanging, banning burqas or whatever, would actually be popular. But in strategic terms for David Cameron, they would be a disaster, because they would communicate, although the individual policies were popular, they would communicate to the general public that the Conservative Party was regressing to the sort of politics it's rejected, and that is precisely the risk that Ed Miliband's now starting.
It may be populist for now, and people, no one's going to disagree with having their bills being brought down.
Well, the energy barons do. And so does the Daily Mail.
But nobody who's paying those bills would say, oh no, I want to keep my bills high, and no one's going to be unsupportive of Ed Miliband bashing the banks, for example, and it is populist stuff. But does it win elections? People actually may be frightened when it comes to election time. They want stability, they want security. They don't necessarily want a party that's not or is against business.
No, I think this is the problem with this whole kind of debate. I think it's very much stuck in the past. The reality we have at the moment is people are going through the biggest, longest squeeze in their living standards since Queen Victoria sat on the throne in the 1870s. The next generation is set to be poorer than the last. People will commit to action which will improve their living standards.
The revolution, Dan Hodges.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Owen's talking about an agenda stuck in the past. That's precisely the problem. I mean, I cannot believe that Ed Miliband arrived at a Labour Party conference and wanted to see a series of headlines saying that he was taking the country back to the 1970s.
This is just the hysteria of...
Surely the big division, Joe, is if Miliband can put himself at the head of the little people versus a rich elite, and if Cameron allows that positioning to happen, it's not socialism or capitalism, but it is a winning electoral strategy, and that's Cameron's challenge.
But just quickly to respond to that, there is absolutely no doubt that Ed Miliband has won the argument about which of the two party leaders is most in touch with the British people.
Well, there we go.
No, I haven't heard you say that before, Dan Hodges.
Of course, if you look at any of the opinion polls, they ask who is in touch. Ed Miliband, comes out in front. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It's not about who's in touch, though. It's not about who empathises with the problems of the British people. It's who's seen to be best placed to solve the problems of the British people, and that's where Ed Miliband starts to fall down.
Can I just caution your logic? I mean, you say these are the last sorts of headlines you wanted to see, Red Ed, all the rest of it. I have to say, I think the right in this country are in danger of looking like the sort of frothing at the mouth. Listen, let me finish. US-style,
you've only got 5 seconds.
US-style Tea Party libertarians.
But it wasn't the right that were calling him Red Ed.
As I say,
the
public would actually like to see them.
Jonathan Friedland was
the public would like to see them go further.
Gentlemen.
They'd support public ownership.
Gentlemen, socialism and capitalism, we'll have to stop it there.